Hi, and welcome back. I am Heather, your host here at Felony Spectator. On today's episode, we're going to talk about Natasha Boykin and the injustice surrounding her case. I got into this case while I was researching Phoebe Hanschuk because it's another case where police ruled it a suicide, except there are just too many things that point towards something more. And there are a lot of cases like this out there, like a lot. Strangely, I wasn't able to find newspaper articles on this case. It seems like it really wasn't reported on. But after hearing this story, I couldn't just ignore it and I had to find out more, and it's mind-boggling. I would love to know what you guys think. Let's dig in. Natasha Boykin was born February 5th of 1985 and was described as a bubbly, outgoing, bright 24-year-old. She was from Villano Beach, Florida, and was very close to her mom, Angel King. She was very petite, about 4'10", but she had this amazing, bright personality that just made her larger than life. Her mother, Angel King, would also say that she was a very kind-hearted person and very loving. The last few months of Natasha's life were said to be a little bit difficult for her. Natasha's husband had filed for divorce, so Natasha had moved back home to live with her mom so she could navigate this big change in her life a little easier. While she was living with her mom, it didn't take too long before she started to get things back on track. Natasha was working at Aunt Kate's restaurant. She also decided she wanted to pursue a career in physical therapy. And even though she was going through divorce, she also started dating again. She would fall for a man named Willis Casey White, who goes by Casey White. They had met through a local skeet shooting club where Natasha's family and Casey's family all went to. The two of them had a pretty big age gap of 15 years, but that didn't stop her from trying to have a relationship with him. The first 3 months of their dating, things seemed to go pretty good. Natasha seemed happy. However, people would start to notice some red flags, specifically the relationship rules Casey had set. Natasha was only allowed to go on dates with Casey on Wednesdays and Sundays. She was also not allowed to see other men. And it's unclear if that means he wanted things to be inclusive, which would be normal, or if she just wasn't allowed to have male friends at all. With these rules, Natasha also had a feeling that maybe Casey might have been seeing someone else, but he would just brush it off and say that he just wanted to move slowly because he was also recently divorced. About 10 days before her death, Natasha and Casey's relationship would really start to cool down. And it's not said what changed, but her mom sensed that something had changed. Perhaps they saw each other less than the 2 days a week rule. I don't really know. But Natasha had told her mom that she wanted to break up with him. She thought he was too controlling and things just weren't working out. So the afternoon of Natasha's death, she had told her mom that she was going to send him a message to try and end things. According to her actual text message, she would say things like, quote, "I have a hole in my heart. I know we spend a lot of time together, but I thought it was because we both enjoyed each other." It would also say, quote, "Sorry that I came on too strong. I'm sorry that I cared, and I'm sorry that I wanted to be with you," end quote. And I don't know if these messages were part of a breakup message, and I couldn't really find anything else to give us more context, like Casey's half of the conversation, but it definitely leaves me with more questions. Casey would then tell Natasha he was going out with friends that night, so Natasha made plans with one of her friends named Miranda. She wanted to go have a couple drinks, talk to her friend about things going on in her life, and just relax. But before she left the house, she would tell her mom, "I have something to tell you and you're going to be mad. You were right all along, but I'll tell you later." And this would always haunt Angel. What was it that Natasha was going to tell her? Did it have to do with Casey? We will never know. Around 9:30 that night, Natasha would pick up Miranda. They would start their night at the Ritz pub. And Natasha was upset because one of her close friends had died in Iraq. And she also mentioned that her ex-husband was no longer going to send her money. Natasha also mentioned that her relationship with Casey wasn't going very well. And to me, this seems normal. This is what girls do. We go out, have drinks with our friends, and bitch about the shitty things going on in our lives. I feel like this is completely normal. But after a bit, the girls would head to Litch's pub. Natasha made a comment to her friend saying, "I hope we don't see Casey here." But sure enough, they would in fact run into Casey. Miranda said that she let Natasha approach Casey, thinking that maybe they could work some things out. And when they were done talking, Natasha would tell Miranda that she wished they hadn't run into Casey, that she'd rather not see him at all because she was planning on breaking up with him. The girls would then leave, and it gets a bit confusing here. Some accounts say that they went back to the Ritz, but other accounts say they went back to Lynch's pub to try and catch Casey cheating. The back and forth bit is a bit confusing, and I couldn't confirm where they went, but I think in the end they were at the Ritz. And Miranda and Natasha danced a bit. Natasha talked to Casey one more time, and then the girls left just after midnight. Natasha was just done with the evening and she wanted to go home. Now, apparently, according to Miranda, while driving back to Miranda's house, Casey texted Natasha asking where she was at. Natasha would reply saying she was going home. But according to Casey's interview with police, he said that at the bar they said hi to each other, even danced together, and thought that they had a great time.
As far as I was concerned, we had a great time. And then I said, hey, see you, baby. And she left and I left. And I was hoping I'd see her at the house.
After Natasha and Miranda left the pub, Casey stuck around the bar and he said he expected to see Natasha at his house a little while later. He would claim that he actually left his door unlocked that night in hopes that Natasha would show up at his house. Now, let's remember, Natasha was living with her mom and was also planning on breaking up with Casey that day. So why would she go back to Casey's house? What would make him think that Natasha would end up there? Natasha did pack an overnight bag, but it makes more sense that she'd be staying with Miranda that night, not Casey. According to Miranda, Natasha just wanted to go home. It's not said what Casey did after Natasha left the bar, but it would be several hours before he got home. Again, if he knew Natasha was going to be at his house, why did he stay out for a few more hours? Assuming they just made up and weren't breaking up, why wouldn't he just go home to her? Anyway, around 4:30 a.m., he claims that when he got home, he would see Natasha dead on his bedroom floor, and Casey would then call 911 right away.
Jack Beach 911.
Yeah, come over. 420. It's 427 2nd Avenue North.
What's going on there?
I think my girlfriend just killed herself. I just came home, and she shot herself right in the chest.
Is she breathing at all, sir?
No, she's dead.
Okay, hold on just a minute for me. Stay on the line, okay?
Now, maybe it's just me, but it seems odd for Casey to be so matter-of-fact in telling the operator that his girlfriend shot herself in the chest and that she was dead. How did he know that? Allegedly, he didn't touch Natasha either. So how did he know that she shot herself for sure? How was he so confident that he knew what happened and was so calm? Obviously, I don't know Casey. I don't know how he'd react finding his girlfriend dead, but it doesn't seem to me like a fight or flight response kicked in. It didn't seem shocking to him or upsetting. It's said that Natasha used Casey's loaded .357 Magnum revolver that he kept beside his bed. Is this normal for people in Florida to just leave your loaded weapons laying around? Do you leave your house unlocked with your loaded gun beside the bed? That seems crazy to me. Is that normal? Does someone live in Florida that could tell me if that's normal? Anyway, he would tell police that he did not touch Natasha's body at all, and he was adamant that he did not shoot her. It's said that Natasha shot herself in the chest while leaning up against the bed. So we can assume she was probably slumped over in front of the bed, and we would also presumably see her laying in a pool of blood. There might be blood splatter, maybe on the bed that she was leaning on, maybe on her hands, a wall. Now, I'm only assuming that. I am not a forensics expert. With that said, I do own a Smith & Wesson 686, which fires a .38 Special and a .357 Magnum. The gun used was Casey's .357 Magnum. This is a very powerful bullet. This is why I assume there would be a pool of blood or blood near the exit wound. I would also assume that the gun still wouldn't be in her hand. The kickback on a .357 is quite forceful, and depending on her grip, I think it would either be in her lap or in front of her somewhere. This gun is also loud. I wear ear protection when I shoot at the range, and it is still loud. Casey lived in a detached garage apartment on his parents' property, but nobody was questioned if they heard a gunshot or woke up in the middle of the night. For some reason, the crime scene looked much different than what we'd assumed this suicide would look like. She wasn't slumped over against the bed at all. She was actually laying on her back on the floor, and there was very little blood. No blood on the bed, no splatter or anything. Now, Casey says he never touched Natasha at all, which kind of makes sense because you would think there might be drag marks of blood from the bed to the floor. And he claims all he did was pick up the gun and put it where it was supposed to be. The gun apparently was still in her hand, according to him. But why did you move the gun, Casey? Strangely, there was also a small trail of blood through the house towards the bathroom. There was also blood on the bathroom floor and on the door casing. It said that Natasha died immediately after the bullet went through her heart, and that makes sense. But how did Natasha shoot herself in the heart and then walk to the bathroom and then walk back to the bedroom and lie on the floor? There was also said to be a long brown hair on the bathroom floor, as well as one wrapped around her right bicep. Natasha had very blonde hair and Casey had no hair. But police didn't take any samples of the blood found in the bathroom or the hair that was found on Natasha's arm. They also didn't check the gun for fingerprints, so basically no forensic evidence was processed at all. Another thing that was noted was bruising all over Natasha's body. A large fresh bruise on her forehead, bruises on her arms and around her neck. And these bruises resembled what you would expect to see if there was a struggle. However, these bruises weren't included in the medical examiner's notes. And I actually requested a copy of the report, and there is a section on external examination. And here it mentions the skull as well as the scalp, and it says no hemorrhages were found. Now, I don't know what the protocol is when examining a body, but I feel like taking note of a large forehead bruise should be pretty standard practice. In fact, all of her bruises were excluded from the report. However, it did mention other scars on her body, specifically her breast implant scars, but not fresh bruising. Police would also see that her jeans were unzipped, her underwear was on backwards, and one of her shoulder straps on her bra was broken. The bra also didn't have blood on it or a gunshot hole, despite the fact that she apparently shot herself through the heart, which also went right through her breast implant. And even though her underwear was on backwards and her pants were unzipped, they didn't do a rape test or a sexual assault test on Natasha. And I guess that needs to be requested, but you would think that maybe in this case it would be important. Police suggested that Natasha was leaning against the bed when she shot herself, and police took a photo of the mattress that she was apparently leaning against. According to the medical examiner's report, her wound was almost horizontal, which means the bullet went right through her and then into the mattress. But for some reason, only the mattress cover had a hole, not the actual mattress. How does that happen? The bullet stopped at the mattress? I couldn't find any information on the shell casing or where the bullet ended up either. Was it located in the mattress? Was it on the wall, on the floor? I don't know. I couldn't find that. Police did test Natasha's hands and Casey's hands for gunshot residue, and they both tested positive. And if it was suicide, of course, Natasha's going to have residue, but how did Casey? It said it's from when he picked up the gun and put it away. And the photos of Casey also show what appears to be stippling on his forehead. What did Casey say about the stippling found on his hands and forehead? He said it was probably from when he moved the gun. But that's not really how stippling works. But police seem fine with that explanation, and they didn't even test the residue on his forehead. Now, I'm going to talk about the wound here for a minute, so skip to the next chapter if you don't really want to hear about that. The medical examiner's report mentions dense stippling 2 centimeters in diameter around the defect, which is the entry hole of the bullet. and more sparse stippling encompassing the entry wound. The entire area of stippling is about 12 centimeters by 10 centimeters horizontally, which definitely tells us that she was shot at fairly close range, but it wasn't held directly on her body. If it had been in contact with her body, the soot would have been embedded into her skin and seared the wound. And very little soot and stippling would be found around the skin. I read that in a forensic pathology of trauma study. The study was done in the US and was quite detailed with photos. I wouldn't suggest looking at something like this. Now, I don't know much about suicide, but it seems strange to me that she'd hold a gun about a foot away from her chest. Typically, there's direct contact with weapons during suicide. People want to make sure their aim is right. Nobody wants to live through a botched suicide. So I had to find some stats. According to a Texas study, most people, about 84%, shoot themselves in the head when they commit suicide. And of course, they use their dominant hand. So the majority, 51%, end up having an entry to the right side or the left side temple. Others are in the mouth, which is approximately 20%, the forehead, which is about 9%, and 6% being under the chin. But the chest is a lot less. Only 14% of suicides aim at their chest. And that's just one study that was done in Texas. Another study shows that suicide by chest is even lower and came in at 4%. So it's really rare for people to point guns at their chests. And it's more common for a man to use a gun and less likely for a female to use a gun, especially a female who's never shot a gun before, like Natasha, according to her mom. Now, maybe Natasha was the 4% who shot herself in the chest. Maybe she held the gun a foot away and then walked through the house before laying down on the floor. I don't know. That night, Casey was also wearing what appeared to be a gun holster on his ankle, which can be seen in the photos. But that holster wasn't confiscated either. And why would he even be wearing a holster if he left his gun at home? Is that something people do in Florida too? Wear empty holsters? Now, I guess when Casey told 911 and the police that it was a suicide, they went with it. Nobody questioned any other possibility. Natasha had also allegedly sent a text message to Casey, which police used to corroborate that, and it read, "I'm using your gun. Thanks for keeping it loaded." Now, why would Natasha be suicidal? She apparently had a good time at the bar, was going back to Casey's house, according to Casey, where Casey was said to see her later. And if she threatened this, why didn't Casey rush home? Why didn't he call the police at that point? If she wasn't happy with Casey, wouldn't she just go home? It just doesn't make sense to me. Let's say she was mad at him for whatever reason. She isn't going to kill herself. Most women want to confront their boyfriends. They're not going to kill themselves. According to FolioWeekly.com, there were many more texts. Apparently one saying that she was sad about her friend dying, another one saying she was too drunk to drive home, even though Miranda said neither of them were drunk. Another text saying she was lost and didn't know where she was or how to get home. And the last message sent was the one saying that she was in Casey's apartment with his gun. Casey made a statement to Folio Weekly that he did not get any of the messages because he was in Atlantic Beach out of cell phone range. But he also doesn't say if he got the messages while he was on his way home. Police brought in Natasha's friend Miranda to speak with since she was the last person to see Miranda alive. Miranda had said that Natasha was upset about the death of her friend, the one who died in Iraq, but she was also excited about a trip to the Carolinas to see a friend. They were also going to touch base the next morning and talk about the career path Natasha was choosing. Angel, Natasha's mother, had planned Natasha's funeral, and a lot of the community attended, as did family and friends. Casey also attended the funeral, but he showed up with Natasha's friend Courtney Maller. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean anything. Perhaps she was just being supportive of him, but it does seem strange to everyone. Side note, she had long dark brown hair. Natasha's mother, Angel, was really confused by this. Nothing was making sense, and she really just didn't think her daughter was suicidal. Natasha had been living with her mom, and her mom said that she didn't believe Natasha was even depressed. She thought Natasha was hopeful and looking forward to life again since her divorce. Her mom was so adamant that she requested the case file on Natasha and did her own investigating. Angel would find other oddities in the case, one being that there was 4 pints of blood missing from Natasha's body. That's a lot of missing blood. Now, remember, there wasn't a big pool of blood found at the crime scene. There also wasn't blood on her bra strap or blood on the mattress that she apparently was leaning up against. So where did it all go? She also learned that the pillow Natasha used for driving was missing. Now, Natasha was only 4'10", so she needed a special pillow in order to drive safely. Does that mean that someone else drove her car? Her overnight bag was also gone, $200 was missing from her purse, and the shoes she was wearing that night were somehow missing as well. Now, wouldn't all that stuff still be at Casey's house if that's where she went to after the bar? Angela wanted to make sure she wasn't making any mistakes in assuming that things seemed suspicious, so she hired a private detective. This detective, David Hodges, would see in the crime scene photos a very clear fingerprint on the gun. This fingerprint wasn't investigated, so we can assume the fingerprint would be either Natasha's or Casey's, but what if it was someone else's? Why wasn't the gun processed? Detective Hodges also decided to canvass the neighborhood, since police didn't, and not a single person said that they heard a gunshot that night. The detective did speak with a person by the name of Nathan Franco, because Nathan and Natasha had plans to see each other the following night. He said Natasha was her typical happy self, and he didn't notice anything out of the ordinary. He mentions that Natasha implied that her and Casey were on and off, but he believed that they were breaking up. The detective also found out that the last text message Natasha sent out to Casey, the one that says that she found his gun, wasn't sent from his home. It pinged about a mile north of Casey's house. So the detective believes that Natasha was killed in another location and then brought back to the house and positioned to make it look like a suicide. And this makes sense considering there's so much blood missing. They probably forgot her shoes, stole her stuff, and whoever drove her car back to the house probably tossed her driving pillow because they didn't need it. Angela would go back to the local police, and they basically told her that they already spoke with her, they've already investigated the case, and the death is a suicide. Angel was still not satisfied. She then hired someone else, Dr. Jonathan Arden, who is a renowned forensic pathologist. He also sees a lot of inconsistencies. The bra clasp is one that he can't ignore. There is an imprint on Natasha's back of her bra. Now, if you wear a bra, you know they leave marks and imprints. And this imprint actually covers the exit wound on her back. The bra was pulled down for the crime scene photo, and you can clearly see the imprint. Why didn't the bullet go through the back of the bra? Why didn't it leave any blood on the bra strap? We can only assume she wasn't wearing the bra when she was shot and it was put back on after. And that would also explain why one of the bra straps was broken. Now, it's pretty common knowledge that tests like toxicology reports take a while. On average, they come back after about 60 to 90 days. But somehow, Natasha's was completed in only 1 hour. Not only is that totally unheard of, but this test wasn't even accurate. Now, I don't know how to read these tests, but it does show she had some alcohol in her system. But her mom said that the medication Natasha takes daily for her hypothyroidism wasn't even listed in the report. According to Dr. Arden, the text message that Natasha had sent to Casey also didn't end up going to Casey's phone. His cell phone bill would only show that the last message he got was 11:07 on the 10th. So who did she send the message to? Or did he just have his phone off completely? Police didn't look into that phone at all, but Casey did allegedly own 2 cell phones. One was hidden in the center console of his truck, which also wasn't looked into. It's also noted that the clothes Casey had worn to the bar were in a heap next to Natasha's body, and you can see them in the crime scene photos. Miranda, Natasha's friend, also told police that Casey changed clothes. The clothes he was wearing in the police photos were not the same clothes he wore at the bar, so he must have changed clothes before calling police. But these were also never tested for gunshot residue or blood. With this new information, Casey would be brought back in for questioning a year later. And he is still adamant that he did not move Natasha. He found her, he called police. He is still adamant that he did not move her. He found her, put his gun away, and immediately called police. The police assume that Casey probably did move Natasha, but just doesn't remember. Police also showed him the photo of his face that had the black stippling, and Casey denies that Police also showed him the photo of his face with the black stippling on his forehead, and Casey denies it and thinks it's just dirt. Now, remember, he originally thought it was from when he moved the gun, but he has since changed his story and said that it was probably from the low-hanging trees outside his driveway. Because police didn't test it a year earlier, we will now never know. Casey also took a polygraph test, which he passed. However, there is a deception on the question asking if he shot the victim. The police excused that question as he passed the rest of the questions. But the other questions were worded differently. For example, were you there when Natasha shot herself? But Natasha didn't shoot herself, so that wouldn't show up as a deception. Casey and Natasha's friend, Courtney Maller, the one who he showed up with at the funeral with long dark hair, they were still together for at least another year after Natasha's death. I couldn't find the exact length of their relationship. I found her Facebook profile, and it looks like she's no longer with Casey. Not saying Courtney had anything to do with Natasha's death, but she was never questioned or looked into or talked to. It is tacky, though, that she went on to date Casey right after Natasha died. But who am I to judge? Do what makes you happy. Except murder. Police have since closed the case, and they're not going to entertain reopening it for anyone. Angel is very persistent in trying to find answers, but she's now being denied any further public record requests. And there isn't a statute of limitations on requesting public records in Florida, but for some reason, Angel and her attorneys are no longer allowed to get anything further. According to FolioWeekly.com, the public records are available to Angel, but she needs to pay upwards of $179,000, possibly more depending on what it is she's requesting. She would need to put a down payment of $89,000 to even get things started. I also learned that there's family connections to the police force, which Angel has pointed out on her website, truthseekersus.org. So truthseekersus.org. I'll put the link in the comments. It goes on to say that lead investigator Scott Hughes is possibly related to Corporal Randy Hughes of the Jacksonville Police Department, who is best friends with Casey. Hughes' son rented a house from Casey's parents right in front of where Natasha was found. The now chief of police force, Commander Patrick Dooley, and his wife are good friends with Casey's family for plus 32 years. This is the problem with small towns. Everybody knows everybody. And if you're friends with the right people, you could get away with things easier than others. Cases like this are so frustrating because it's almost too obvious that this isn't a suicide. I just don't understand how someone could call 911, say it's a suicide, tell the police it's a suicide, and everyone just believes it and treats it as such without gathering more information. Now, I'm not saying Casey is guilty, but it was his house, it was his gun, it was his girlfriend. And I feel like if it was my girlfriend or boyfriend or whoever, and I learned that there was evidence that pointed towards a murder, or if I was a suspect, then I would be going to the police asking them to do more. But he's not. He's still rolling with the suicide theory. And to me, that kind of seems like he's responsible for setting it up as a suicide because he's sticking to it so much. The latest update is from February of this year, 2021. Angel King attended the Medical Examiner's Commission meeting and stood up to speak about the death of her daughter. Dr. Nelson, who is the District 10 medical examiner, told Angel that the meeting wasn't the best venue to discuss specifics of the case because the members wouldn't have known to refamiliarize themselves with Natasha's case prior to the meeting. He told Angel he personally will go over all the details and get in touch with her. Medical examiner staff was asked to send him all of the documents. And that's the last update I could find. And I wonder what Dr. Nelson's findings will be. At this point, I feel like unless there's new evidence found or someone comes forward, it probably will remain classified as a suicide because the investigation was so botched. I mean, I guess the medical examiners could say the death is undetermined instead of suicide, but I don't think that'll happen. There is a $10,000 reward to someone who brings answers to Natasha's family, and I hope someone comes forward because Angel needs help. Angel is never going to stop the fight for justice, and I wish Angel all the best and all the strength to fight. I truly believe that there is more to this story than suicide. I would love to know what you guys think, so leave me a comment. If you liked the video, hit like, hit subscribe, and we'll see you guys next week. Thanks again.